Let's go swimming. Actually, let's go to Piccadilly. Hello, friends of Piccadilly! I am Mr. Cameron, and I won't be doing any cannonballs today, but I will get to spend some time with all of you. Sometimes it does make me a little sad to think about all the things I can't do. Do you ever feel that way? But then I like to think of all the things I can do, and that makes me feel a lot better. So for now, I'm going to keep washing my hands extra good. I'll stay a safe distance from all my friends, and I'll do some of the things I love to do that I still can, like reading stories. And the story that I picked out for us today to start, I think it's a really good story about finding out that if you listen and take things a little slow, you can do a whole lot. It's called Little by Little. Let's open it up and let's read this together. How about it? Otto is making a list, an I can do list and an I can't do list. The can-do side was much longer. On it was forward roly-poly, backward roly-poly, being kind to frogs, mudsliding, making good sandcastles, slippery rock hopping. The can't-do side was shorter. And on the can't-do side, it just said swimming. Otto, are you going to swim today? Asked Beaver. No, said Otto. Not at all? Asked Bear. Not even a little? Otto sighed and went home. Don't listen to Beaver and Bear, said his mommy, when Otto told her. Little by little, you will learn to swim. Otto decided he would have to keep trying. Sometimes, Otto would pretend he could swim, but really he was hopping, very, very quickly, along the riverbed. Other times, he would run along the riverbank, trying not to be left behind by his friends as they spun and tumbled through the water. But most days, Otto would simply sit on his favorite slippery rock, wishing and wishing, from his whiskers all the way down to his toes, that he could swim. Every day, his mommy would say, "Today's the day." And every day, it wasn't. Then, one sunny day, Otto and his sister were watching their friends jumping off the highest ever rock into the deepest ever pool below. You have got to start small, his sister said. Small? Said Otto. Yes, small, she said. Come on, today's the day to start small. That's how I did it when I learned to swim. So, Otto started small. He hopped along the riverbed, keeping his toes off the bottom just that little bit longer every time. Then, he did higher hops, with floating in between. The next day, Otto was floating without holding on to anything, and pretty soon, he was kicking all the way to the halfway stone. A few days later, Otto splashed and kicked and swam the whole width of the river, from one bank to the other, all by himself. And little by little, that width became the length of the river, from Otto's den to the deepest ever pool. Before long, the splashing and kicking turned into gliding and roly-polies. On the riverbank became underwater tumbling. When he was ready, Otto invited his friends and family to come see his big surprise. With everyone gathered along the riverbank, Otto jumped off the highest ever rock into the deepest ever pool. To see all his friends, Bear and Beaver. "I did it," said Otto to his sister. "I can really swim." "You really can," laughed his sister, hugging her very wet little brother. "You see, you started small and finished big." I like that one a lot. Did you all like it? Well, if you're having fun with all of our swimming and ocean things today, we have a couple crafts that you can pick up if you wanted to make something fun at home. There's a seahorse and an aquarium that you can make together. But for now, let's keep reading some stories. Do you want to read one more with me? Yeah, let's do it. How about Mr. Seahorse? So, you know, the funny thing about seahorses is that unlike humans, where the mom carries the baby before it's born, in seahorses, the dad carries the baby. Let's read the book and see what it's all about. Mr. and Mrs. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea. Mrs. Seahorse began to wiggle and twist this way and that. "It's time for me to lay my eggs," she said. "Can I help?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Oh, yes, thank you," said Mrs. Seahorse, and she laid her eggs into a pouch on Mr. Seahorse's belly. "I'll take good care of our eggs," said Mr. Seahorse. "I promise." As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by, what is that? A group of trumpet fish hidden in a patch of reeds. And let's see if we can find our trumpet fish in here. We have some reeds, and there's the trumpet fish. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Stickleback?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Delighted," replied Mr. Stickleback. "I just built a nest, and right away Mrs. Stickleback laid her eggs into it. Now I am taking good care of them until they hatch." "Keep up the good work," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a lionfish hidden in a coral reef. So we see our coral reef. What's behind it? The lionfish. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Tilapia?" asked Mr. Seahorse. Mr. Tilapia couldn't answer. His mouth was full of eggs. I know, said Mr. Seahorse. "Mrs. Tilapia laid her eggs. Now you are taking good care of them until they hatch." Mr. Tilapia nodded his head. "You must be very happy," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by... what is that? What do you think it is? Oh, it's a pair of leaf fish hiding in the seaweed. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Curtis?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Perfectly fine," replied Mr. Curtis. "Mrs. Curtis laid her eggs, and I have stuck them on my head. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch." "You are doing a good job," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by... I don't know what this one is. What do you think? What do you see there? Oh, it's a stonefish hidden behind a rock. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Pipe?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Couldn't be better," replied Mr. Pipe. "Mrs. Pipe laid her eggs along my belly. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch." "You should feel proud of yourself," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Bullhead?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Tip-top," replied Mr. Bullhead. "Mrs. Bullhead laid her eggs, and the eggs hatched. Now I'm babysitting." "You are doing a fine job," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. The time had come for the seahorse babies to be born. Mr. Seahorse wiggled and twisted this way and that. At last, the babies tumbled from Mr. Seahorse's pouch and swam away. One baby turned around and tried to come back into the pouch. "Oh no," said Mr. Seahorse. "I do love you, but now you are ready to be on your own." And that's the end. Well, thanks for reading with us here at Piccadilly, everybody. I'm Mr. Cameron, and I'll see you next time for Storytime, okay? Bye, everybody.